Hi, I'm Caleb, and I'm going to be sharing my part for the dice game project.
Hi, I'm Ishika, and I'll be sharing my portion of the dice game project.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'll be sharing my part of the Dice Game project.
The role that I was in charge of was creating the initial rules page that pops up whenever you start the app. It gives instructions to the user about how the game is played and how they can control the game for their choices. Additionally, there is a variable sound bar that, when interacted with, controls the sound that the users can hear. There are multiple things that generate sound, from buttons to drop-down tabs, and once you start, there's a sound along with the sound of the rolling dice. We also have an animation for the rolling dice. The dice are shown to roll, and this produces an output for the user that's both enjoyable to watch and has play feature. I also added images and created the starting page elements. The table in the multiplayer modes were also created by me, and these serve to store past rolled values so you can track what values you rolled in the past.
In my portion of the game, I created the reset button, allowing players to go back to the starting page. As you can see here, I hit start, and then once the game starts, you can go back by hitting reset, and then you can change the mode to like 5 dice, and then start, and then you'll get new dice, and then you can reset, you can change the volume, you can change the duration, whichever you want. I also created the timer whose values decrease over time and can end the game. For example, you have a choice between 30 seconds and 90 seconds, and let's just put it at 60. When you start, the timer gauge will decrease linearly down, and once the timer gauge reaches 0, then the submit button will effectively have been hit. Once you hit submit, you will be seeing a your score area and a high score area. So your score shows your distance from 20 as well as how long it took to get there. And your high score is also distance from 20 and how long it took to get there. In this game, distance has precedence over time. So if I reset and get a further away score, like this is 4, it's further away, but I do it faster, it's still a quote-unquote worse score. I also created the hard mode feature, where with hard mode enabled, your distance from 20 and your score will not be shown. So you'll have to do the math yourself as well as being under the time pressure.
Okay, so first I was in charge of creating a reroll button. The reroll button allows you to respin the dice in case if you got a bunch of dice that you don't like. These reroll dices are stored into the table below where my partner Caleb has created, so you can see your past rolls and past dices. I also was in charge of creating the multiplayer function, which allows 2 players to play at once and compete against each other. This works with ThinkSpeak as it stores the data between the score of the first player and the second player and sends it to each other. The reason why we use ThinkSpeak is that so it allows you to store data and share that data among multiple players. I also created a function that allows you to choose between the single player and multiplayer, allowing you to decide if you want to play by yourself or with somebody else. The reason why we have multiplayer 1 and 2 is that you can't play simultaneously at once, and multiplayer 1 always goes first before multiplayer 2, so you get to decide who goes first or second beforehand.
We noticed that our prior clips did not include sound, so here's a tutorial with sound. So we can adjust the volume. From there, the duration slider should have a sound. And then we can start. The reroll button has a sound of dice hitting the table, and then submit. And reset and play those sounds all over again. You can adjust the volume gauge to a higher height. It makes it slightly louder. And that is the Sounds Center app. Thank you. System, so I'll be choosing multiplayer 1, and I will be choosing 6 dice for this example. And now I'm going to hit start. It takes a while to initialize, but now we have a table with all of our values. And with this, we can hit the reroll button, and it would add another set of values underneath, and then we can hit it again if we don't like these dice, and we get another set of values. And then we can hit submit. And then my screen doesn't have anything, so I now have to wait for player 2.
Since player 2's turns over, since player 1 turns over, I'm player 2, and it's now my turn to play. I can change around operators again, trying to get as close to 20 as possible. However, as opposed to single player mode, this is always on hard mode. So no matter what we choose in regards of hard mode, our score will never be shown, just to increase the level of difficulty for users. Again, same thing, my reroll values update to the table, and so I can see my past values. Once I decide that I like my final answer, I can go ahead and submit my score. So now it takes me to the screen. Now both me and player one are looking at this. This is to basically just take us back to the 0 and allows us to show our score to each other at the same time. So let's go ahead and see who won. Oh, player one wins, so I lost. Her value was closer to 20. So the part that I mainly worked on was the rolling dice functions, as well as some of the sound works. In the initial startup function, we import all the sounds from our files in our MATLAB drive. From there, we load the files and we actually compress off the ends to cut off some of the sound effects as they were too long originally. So what we do with that is we go into our play function. We play the dice noises in case, we're rolling the dice. And then once the function is completed, we use a stop function to stop the sound effects. So the sound actually doesn't bleed over. That was an issue with the gong sound effect whenever you start the game. Now, for the roll dice function, what we're doing is we are saying that for the number of dice selected, we are rolling that many number of dice. We use our rand_i function for that. Then we upload the number of dice pictures onto the dice. So if you have, again, it's 1 to number dice. So if you have 5 dice that you selected, you upload 5 photos onto the thing. Now, to get our animation, what we did was we had a short pause in between when we rolled the dice, and we rolled the dice multiple times, generating different random values. And what this did was it created the effect of the dice rolling. And that, with the sound of the dice noise alongside it, created a pretty good effect. Next, what we did for every time the dice were rolled, we called a calculate output function, which calculated, what the dice was actually, saying. From there, all we basically did was we stored the operators into strings, and we used an eval function to evaluate what the equation was showing. All right, and after that, all we had to do was, if it was in multiplayer mode, because only multiplayer has the table, put it into our data value. Yeah.
I was in charge of creating the timer function. So in here is my code for the timer. I have a default timer for the 30-second case, and it's basically a linspace that decreases over the time where each time it's paused. And then I have a lot of cases where if the submit button is hit, then stop the timer. If the timer reaches 1, then hit the submit button. If the reset button has been hit, then reset your timer and reset the reset button to have false, which means that basically don't keep the timer broken. And then if app not turned, that means that if it's not your turn, then reset the timer. And then it's the same code for the non-default timer.
I will now share my part of the code, which is to share whose turn it is when you're playing a dice game. This code right here shares that if app.player1's turn equals true, that means it is player one's turn, and app.player1's equals false, that means I am not player one. And if this is the case, then I enter into this while loop where the screen would just be a blank background, and I will have to wait for the other player to finish, and it will be my turn. And if this code here shows that if app.player1 equals turn equals false, that means it is not player one's turn, and app.player1 equals true, this means I am player one. If this is the case, then I'll also enter the same while loop where it is not my turn, and I will have to wait for the other person to finish before I can see the end result, and I will just be waiting to a blank screen until the other person is finished. I will also be sharing this part of the code where the person submits their score and how the scores will be stored. If these are scored the 2 players' scores of player 1 and player 2 into ThinkSpeak, as you can see here, it stores in this field right here, player 1 score, and it stores players 2 score. And once the submit button is pressed, then it shows it decides through a function who wins based on the 2 scores.
Thank you for watching our dice game video.